This is an interesting one.
Yeah, you like this one?
I don't know. I think it is.
So CBC reporting the height of the pandemic, funeral homes in Ontario were severely limited to the number of people. Usually, I think it was 10 for quite a while. Only 10 people could attend in-person funeral services.
During the pandemic. That forced professionals to offer live stream services or remote viewing from the funeral home. Which they still do, by the way.
They're still doing it.
I found that out. The funeral we attended
was broadcast.
It was
right?
broadcast, and that was a service from Lougheed's
that's a service
is still continuing from what you just said, right? During the pandemic.
So
yeah.
Kate McMaster, communication coordinator with OACFP, which is a long, doesn't really roll off the tongue. It's what's that called?
An acronym?
Acronym, thank you. Said the pandemic had an enormous impact on the funeral profession.
And it would.
And many people were unable to attend funerals, conduct funerals, the fashion they were accustomed to. A lot of changes, and very sudden changes at that. And the profession had to respond. So technology was a big part of that adaptation, just like I'm sure many people had to adapt because of the pandemic and use technology to overcome that. And consumers and professions readily adopted the technology to continue funeral services. And you would think that funeral services would be one of the things affected because quite a few people did die during the pandemic. That's the nature of a pandemic. Funeral operators, it seems, were more or less left to their own during the pandemic. Just like many other sectors, they had to kind of come up with plans on their own to survive because, I mean, imagine any other business, suddenly they say, you can't do 90% of the things that made you money before.
Exactly, yeah.
Like they would need to adjust. Yeah. But in your opinion, do you think they adapted pretty well?
Well, that's the whole thing. I would think it would be even tougher for them because, let's face it, what's the big fear of a pandemic? Mostly from people? Death. And so their business is death.
Right.
So
if anything, people probably assume they had a bump in business.
Yeah, well,
but it's not the case.
Possibly, I don't know. It doesn't give any of the numbers there. I guess did deaths go up during the pandemic or not? That would have been I would have been interested to hear that. But
I looked at the stats on that in a class actually.
And what did you find?
Most countries it did go up.
Oh, okay.
But some countries had a negative death impact.
It went down.
Actually, the number of people, because they looked at the expected deaths.
Oh, okay.
And then what actually happened.
To compare it to the...
So yeah, countries like United States, Canada, Mexico actually had positive. So there were more people that died than they expected. And they look at those numbers and they say, well, that must be in part due to COVID because why would just a bunch of people die that weren't expected to?
Yeah, exactly.
But then other countries like Korea and Taiwan had a negative impact. They said fewer people died than they expected
during the pandemic.
So that must be because of the response. And
Possibly.
Other factors like reduced traffic on roads and fewer people going to work that's dangerous, things like that. So there's lots of factors. Yeah.
Well, your question was, how do you think this industry fared? And the first thing came to my mind was people dying, and people are afraid of dying. And here you have a funeral. Let's say a person died of COVID.
Yeah.
And you're only allowed 10 people there, and it's just, anyways, it's a kind of a dark kind of a thing because
it is.
Their business is attending the funeral of already something everyone's already afraid of. There's already this huge, stigmatism to what's going on, but you're now saying, it costs money, so you have to ask for money at this time, even though your heart's going out for everybody. What's going on? We're going through this thing that the world, unprecedented thing, and you're making money off of it.
Of course, but that's their business.
That's what I mean. That's their business. So it'd be an awkward position. So yeah, my heart goes out to all those funeral directors during the pandemic. For sure, it would have been an interesting time, for sure. But sounds like to me they made it out okay, and that's what this conference is about. How do they come out of this? Almost like how Laurentian is going to come out of the bankruptcy. How are funerals going to come out of the pandemic?
Well,
On the right
Donald
side?
Perot, a funeral director professor at Collège Boréal,
Wow.
said that the survey that they're conducting would help funeral home operators prepare in case anything like COVID-19 happens in the near future.
Again,
So,
like monkeypox.
is that a pandemic right now?
They're saying it's going to be, yeah.
Could be, right?
They're saying that's the next one.
I have heard a few things about monkeypox. I'm not super up on it, but from what I've heard, it's not airborne.
Yeah.
And it's not person-to-person transmissible through like saliva, like COVID. So I don't think it's going to be the same.
Well, I had an interview I was watching from Bill Gates in 2021, and he said, yeah, we're in a pandemic right now, and more than likely there's going to be another pandemic right after this one.
That's true, yeah.
And he goes, and we have to be looking and researching how, a virus could come. They come from a bat, or it could come from a monkey. And then he just continued talking, and I thought, well, that's interesting. How he just said a bat or a monkey, meaning COVID, and thought it came from a bat, and then monkeypox comes from a monkey, and he just says those two things. How many animals are there in the world? And he says one could be a bat and one could be a monkey. Bill Gates.
Right. Oh, he
like,
did say that?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'll show it to you.
Really
afterwards.
crazy.
It's crazy. Bill Gates, Bill Gates is like a wizard. He's like Merlin. He's able to see into the future. He's able to tell,
Some people might
what's
think
gonna
that's
happen.
a bad thing.
And he's able to somehow make money off of it at the same time.
Yeah, he did make a lot of money
Like,
during the pandemic, didn't he?
yeah, no, it's just it's an incredible thing what happens when you start a computer software company that gives you
Now
insights.
take this with a droplet of salt.
A droplet of is there
salt
such
water.
a thing?
No, I
Salt
just
water. Okay.
made that, instead of a
Yeah.
grain of salt, I'm going to say take it with a droplet of salt water
Sure.
as a joke. But the World Health Organization says that monkeypox is transmitted to humans through close contact with an infected person or animal, or a material contaminated with the virus. It's
Person, animal, or material.
Yeah, it's transmitted by close contact with lesions, bodily fluids, respiratory droplets, contaminated materials.
Well, respiratory droplets, there you go. There's COVID right there.
But
the same idea.
Like the reason I said to take this with a grain of salt is the World Health Organization has a pretty awful record with, being accurate.
Well, look what they
with
did,
facts.
though. Well, I know, but they just have to come out and say things, and the whole world shuts down. So
The World Health
have a lot of
Organization
power.
has all but lost their credibility, in my opinion.
Your
just
opinion.
because they basically went
My
to the
opinion.
Chinese government and said,
Yeah.
tell us what you want us to tell the world.
But look what they're doing now. They are looking to take over the whole health structure of the world, and basically have all the governments basically have to follow
Exactly.
everything.
That's why
they
I don't
say.
think it's necessarily you should trust what you read there.
If they declare a pandemic, remember at the beginning they're like, "Is this a pandemic? Is this not a pandemic? Is this a?"
Flip-flop.
We were kind of wondering what was going on. They want the ability to just come out and say, "Pandemic, do this." Everyone,
We're in charge.
Whatever we say has to everyone's in lockstep, follow what they say.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what's going on right now. So some countries are saying no, and some are saying, "Yeah, we're on board." I know Joe Biden's totally on board with it.
You think so?
Oh, I know so.
Okay.
He said that.
In other news, I don't want to get sued for libel or something, but I did hear Nancy Pelosi's husband was arrested.
Did you really?
Yeah, in the last day or so.
Is it now? Can we say this here? Or
I read it.
Where did you
I think
read
it's
this?
public information. It came up on my Google feed
that he got arrested?
for a DUI.
Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting. He wasn't able to get off by saying, "I'm Nancy Pelosi's husband."
Well, they think that he's going to be released on bail.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, so
That's what
suspicion of DUI. This is like breaking news, apparently.
Hang on, I got a thing
But
for that.
breaking news. So he had a blood alcohol of 0.08.
Well, I don't even know what that means, really.
I think that's above the limit, but it's not necessarily like
super bad.
drunk as a skunk.
Okay.
But yeah, he's from Northern California, which is like, the Napa Valley. So
Yeah, he's
you would
having
expect
some
him
wine.
to be a little bit.
He's having some wine. Going out.
Ask
in the
yourself, truly, if you lived in that region, would you not be drinking a little bit of wine?
town and driving.
But anyways, I just thought that was funny.
I'm just surprised they arrested him, because usually,
They get away with stuff.
this is Nancy Pelosi's husband.
They said he'll be out on bail for $5,000.
Oh, that's not much.
The guy's like a billionaire.
Hey, AJ here. Did you like that video? Please like and subscribe for more just like it every weekday.
Share it with your friends so they can stay up to date with all Sudbury news.